Dad texted. "We're selling your childhood home tomorrow. Your stuff will be on the curb." I replied, "Okay." He didn't know I'd bought the house 3 years ago through my company. The next morning, the realtor called him with a surprise. The text message came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, just as I was reviewing quarterly reports in my downtown office. My phone buzzed, and I saw Dad's name light up the screen. "We're selling the house tomorrow. Your stuff will be on the curb. Don't bother coming by." I stared at those words for a long moment, my coffee growing cold in my hand. The house on Magnolia Street. The place where I'd spent every summer climbing the oak tree in the backyard. Where I'd studied for college entrance exams at the kitchen table while my parents praised my brother's football trophies. Where I'd tried, again and again, to tell them about my dreams, only to be met with dismissive pats on the head and suggestions that I be more realistic. I typed back a single word. "Okay." What Dad didn't know, what none of my family knew, was that I'd purchased our childhood home 3 years ago through my holding company, Riverside Holdings LLC. They'd been struggling financially after Dad's business, Morrison Construction Company, had defaulted on several major contracts. The bank had been ready to foreclose, and I'd quietly stepped in to buy the mortgage through a network of legal entities that kept my name hidden from public records. For 3 years, I'd let them live there rent-free while they got back on their feet, all while they believed they still owned the house. Every monthly mortgage payment they thought they were making to the bank, it was going into a trust fund I'd set up for their retirement. They had no idea that their financially irresponsible daughter, the one who wasted her time with computers, had been their safety net all along. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Dad. "And don't expect any family support anymore. You've been nothing but a disappointment. Time to face the real world." I set my phone face down on my mahogany desk and returned to my reports. The numbers were good this quarter. Exceptional, actually. Riverside Tech Solutions had just closed a major contract with the state government, and our profit margins were up 42%. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting. I glanced out the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office, 43 stories above the city. Below, the streets glittered with the new smart street lights my company had designed and installed. Traffic flowed smoothly through intersections managed by our AI systems. Even from up here, I could see the digital billboards displaying advertisements, all running on software my team had developed. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Ms. Blackwood, you have an early meeting tomorrow with the mayor's office. Should I confirm?" "Yes, thank you, Jennifer. And please make sure David is prepared for the 9 o'clock. Your realtor? Is this about a new property acquisition?" I smiled. "Something like that." At 8:15 a.m., my phone rang. The caller ID showed David Martinez, my realtor who'd been managing my family's housing situation without them knowing I was involved. "Good morning, David. Ms. Blackwood, I have an unusual situation." His voice was carefully professional, but I could hear the amusement underneath. "There's a gentleman here claiming he owns the property at 1247 Magnolia Street and wants to list it for sale immediately. That would be Robert Morrison. My father. Put him on speaker, please." I heard some shuffling, then Dad's familiar voice, loud and aggressive in that way he got when he thought he was being challenged. "Look, I don't know who this Blackwood person is, but I own this house free and clear. My family has lived here for 18 years. I want it listed today for $900,000. David's professional voice responded carefully. "Sir, I'm afraid there's been some confusion. According to the county records, this property is owned by Riverside Holdings LLC. You would need the owner's permission to list it." "That's impossible." Dad's voice cracked. "I have the deed right here. Sir, that deed shows the original purchase from 2007. However, the property was sold to Riverside Holdings in 2022 when Morrison Construction Company defaulted on the mortgage payments." The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear Dad's world crashing down around him, the weight of reality pressing against everything he thought he knew. "David," I said calmly, "please give Mr. Morrison my contact information. Tell him the property owner would like to discuss the situation." "Of course, Ms. Blackwood." 20 minutes later, my office phone rang. I let it go to 3 rings before answering. "What the hell is going on?" Dad's voice exploded through the speaker. "Who is Riverside Holdings? How did they get my house?" "Hello, Dad. The silence stretched for at least 10 seconds. I could hear him breathing, could imagine the confusion spreading across his face. Naomi? His voice was barely above a whisper. What? How do you know about this? Because Riverside Holdings is my company. I bought the house 3 years ago when you defaulted on the mortgage. Another long silence. When Dad spoke again, his voice was barely audible. You own our house. I do. And for the past 3 years, every payment you thought you were making to the bank was actually going into a retirement fund I set up for you and Mom. This isn't possible. You don't have that kind of money. You work at some little tech startup. You drive that old Camry. I glanced out my window at the parking garage where my car sat. I drive a 2020 Toyota Camry because it's reliable and doesn't draw attention. And yes, I work in tech. I'm the CEO of Riverside Tech Solutions. I could hear Dad breathing heavily on the other end of the line, processing information that didn't fit into any framework he'd constructed about his disappointing daughter. Dad, are you sitting down? Because there's more we need to discuss. More? Riverside Holdings doesn't just own your house. We own the entire Magnolia Street neighborhood. 68 houses total, all purchased over the past 4 years as investment properties. That's impossible. Would you like to see the portfolio? I can email you the documentation right now. Naomi, I don't understand. How could you afford? When did you? We had no idea. You had no idea because you never asked. I kept my voice steady, professional. This was business, after all. Every time I tried to tell you about my business, you changed the subject or made some comment about me wasting my time with computers. I could hear Mom's voice in the background, sharp with panic. What's happening? Robert, what's going on? Dad, put me on speaker so Mom can hear this too. A moment later, Mom's shaky voice came through. Naomi? Honey, what's going on? Hi, Mom. Dad and I were just discussing the house situation. What house situation? Your father said we were selling. Mom, sit down. There are some things you both need to know about my career that I haven't been able to share with you. Over the next hour, I walked them through everything. Riverside Tech Solutions, which I'd built from a small consulting firm into a $215 million software development company. Riverside Holdings, my real estate investment arm that owned over 400 properties across 5 states. The Blackwood Foundation, which had donated $19 million to various charities over the past 2 years. But your apartment, Mom said weakly. It's so small. It's the penthouse of a building I own downtown. I prefer smaller spaces. And your car is paid for and reliable. I don't need a luxury car to validate my success. Dad finally found his voice. Why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us think you were struggling? When did I ever have the chance, Dad? I let some of the frustration seep through. Every family gathering, every phone call, every conversation was about how disappointed you were in my life choices. When exactly was I supposed to bring up my business success? I could hear Mom crying softly in the background. 3 years ago, when you were facing foreclosure, I tried to discuss helping you. You told me to focus on my own problems and stop trying to solve everyone else's with my computer games. I remember, Dad whispered. So I helped anyway. Quietly, I bought your mortgage, let you stay in the house, and made sure your payments went toward securing your retirement instead of enriching some bank. You saved our house. Saved your house, Dad. But more than that, I saved your dignity. You never had to know you'd lost it in the first place. The conversation was interrupted by Jennifer's voice over the intercom. Ms. Blackwood, your 9 o'clock is here. The mayor and city council members for the downtown development project. Thank you, Jennifer. Tell them I'll be 5 more minutes. Naomi, Mom said, her voice thick with tears, did she just say the mayor? Yes. Riverside Tech Solutions is the lead contractor for the new Smart City initiative. We're implementing AI-driven traffic management, digital infrastructure, and public safety systems across the entire metropolitan area. That's a government contract? Dad asked. A $290 million government contract, to be precise. We beat out IBM and Microsoft for the bid. I heard what sounded like Dad sitting down heavily in a chair. Dad, I need to take this meeting, but we should continue this conversation tonight. Can you and Mom meet me for dinner? Where? Mom asked. How about the gardenia room downtown? Top floor? That place costs $250 per person, Dad protested automatically. I'm aware of the prices, Dad. I eat there regularly. Another long silence. Naomi, Dad said finally, his voice breaking. I owe you an apology. We owe you an apology. We'll talk tonight. 7 o'clock. I'll have my driver pick you up. Your driver? See you tonight, Dad. After hanging up, I sat back in my leather chair and looked out at the city below. 43 floors down, the morning rush was in full swing, traffic flowing smoothly through intersections managed by systems my company had designed. Jennifer knocked on the door. The mayor's delegation is ready when you are, Ms. Blackwood. Send them in. And Jennifer, can you have Gregory pick up my parents tonight? They're at 1247 Magnolia Street. They're not used to downtown parking. Of course. The usual car? Actually, use the Mercedes S-Class. It's time they saw that I didn't just succeed. I succeeded spectacularly. The meeting with the city officials went smoothly. We discussed the second phase of the Smart City project, which would expand our AI systems to include automated utilities management and predictive maintenance for city infrastructure. By the end of the meeting, they'd approved an additional $105 million in funding. As the delegation left, Mayor Rodriguez shook my hand warmly. Naomi, I have to say, when we first met 3 years ago, I had no idea your company would transform our city this dramatically. Crime is down 28%, traffic efficiency is up 47%, and our energy costs have decreased by 22%. You've exceeded every projection. Thank you, Mayor Rodriguez. Phase 2 will show even more dramatic results. I believe it. Oh, and congratulations on the Forbes recognition. Tech Innovator of the Year. Well deserved. At 6:30 p.m., I left my office and walked to the parking garage. My black Mercedes S-Class was waiting, along with my driver, Gregory. Good evening, Ms. Blackwood. Should I collect your parents first? Yes, please. They're at 1247 Magnolia Street. The house in your Riverside Holdings portfolio? That's the one, Gregory. And tonight, they're going to learn it's mine. The drive to Magnolia Street took 20 minutes through evening traffic. As we pulled up to the modest 2-story house where I'd grown up, I saw Mom and Dad waiting on the front porch, both dressed in their best clothes. They looked nervous, uncertain, like children waiting to be picked up for their first day of school. Gregory got out to open their doors. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Morrison. I'm Gregory, Ms. Blackwood's driver. Driver? Mom whispered to Dad as they got into the car. Good evening, I said as they settled into the plush leather seats. How are you both feeling? Confused, Dad admitted. Naomi, this car must cost more than I made in 2 years at the construction company. It's efficient and comfortable. I try to make responsible choices. Mom was running her hands over the leather interior, her eyes wide. Honey, this is beautiful. And so quiet. Luxury vehicles tend to be well insulated. Makes for a more pleasant ride. As we drove through downtown, Dad stared out the windows at the digital billboards and smart traffic lights that my company had installed. These new traffic systems, he said slowly, they've made driving downtown so much easier. No more sitting through 3 light cycles. Riverside Tech Solutions designed and implemented those systems, I said casually. Took us 18 months to complete the full rollout. You did that? My team did that. 473 engineers, programmers, and technicians working around the clock. We pulled up to the gardenia room, where the valet immediately recognized my car and driver. Good evening, Ms. Blackwood. Your usual table? Yes, thank you, Marcus. As we walked through the restaurant, I noticed several business leaders nod respectfully in my direction. The maitre d' personally escorted us to my regular table, a corner booth with a panoramic view of the city skyline. Your wine selection is ready, Ms. Blackwood, he said as we sat down. Thank you, Vincent. After he left, Mom looked around the elegant restaurant with wide eyes. Naomi, everyone here seems to know you. I eat here frequently. It's convenient to my office. Where is your office? Dad asked. I pointed out the window to the gleaming skyscraper across the street, its facade lit up against the darkening sky. Riverside Tower. The entire 43rd floor. Dad followed my gesture and saw the large Riverside Tech Solutions sign illuminated on the building's side. That whole building? Mom asked, her voice faint. I own floors 40 through 45. The rest are leased to other companies. The waiter arrived with our wine, a $530 bottle of Napa Valley Cabernet that I'd selected earlier. Ms. Blackwood, shall I pour? Please, Andrew. After the wine was poured and our orders taken, Dad leaned forward across the table, his hands clasped tightly together. Naomi, I need to understand something. When did all this happen? When did you become so successful? It didn't happen overnight, Dad. I've been building these companies for 9 years, ever since I graduated from Stanford. Stanford? Mom's eyes widened. You went to Stanford? We thought you went to State University. I got a full scholarship to Stanford for my master's in computer science and business administration. You were both so busy with Brandon's wedding planning that summer that you never asked where I was actually going to school. The painful truth of that statement hung in the air like smoke. Brandon, their golden child, my older brother, had received all their attention while I quietly earned degrees from one of the world's top universities. We were so focused on the wedding, Mom admitted, tears forming in her eyes. It was such a big event, all those guests. After graduation, I started Riverside Tech Solutions in a small rented office with $12,000 in savings. The first year, I worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week, building our first major software platform. What kind of software? Dad asked, leaning forward. Predictive analytics for logistics and supply chain management. Basically, I created systems that help companies predict what they need, when they need it, and how to get it most efficiently. Think of it as a crystal ball for businesses, but powered by algorithms instead of magic. Our appetizers arrived, lobster bisque and seared scallops. As we ate, I continued the story. By year 2, we had our first major client. Henderson Industries. That contract was worth $3.2 million and allowed me to hire 15 employees. Henderson Industries, Dad said slowly, his spoon stopping halfway to his mouth. They were one of my biggest clients at Morrison Construction. They had us build their new distribution center. I know. I recommended you for that project. Dad's spoon clattered against his bowl. What? When Henderson's CEO asked if I knew any reliable construction companies, I gave him your contact information. That $6.3 million project that saved Morrison Construction from bankruptcy 4 years ago? That was me helping you, even though you had no idea. You got me that contract? I did. And when you started struggling with cash flow 8 months later, I made sure Henderson paid their invoices 30 days early. I also arranged for 2 other companies to hire Morrison Construction for smaller projects. Why? Dad's voice was barely audible. After everything we said to you, after all the times we dismissed your work, why would you help us? Because you're my father. Because I wanted your business to succeed. Because I hoped that maybe, if Morrison Construction was stable, you'd have time to notice what I was building. Mom reached across the table and took my hand, her fingers trembling. We're horrible parents. You're not horrible parents. You just got so focused on what success looked like in your minds that you missed what it actually looked like in reality. Our main courses arrived, filet mignon, Chilean sea bass, and roasted duck, but none of us seemed particularly interested in eating. Tell us about the house, Dad said, pushing his plate aside. Tell us exactly what happened 3 years ago. I took a sip of wine before answering, gathering my thoughts. 3 years ago, Morrison Construction defaulted on several major contracts. You'd overextended, taken on projects that were too big, and the cash flow problems were mounting. Dad nodded grimly. The Riverside Plaza disaster. We lost $230,000 on that job alone. The bank was going to foreclose on your house within 30 days. I knew because I have financial monitoring software that tracks family assets. I wanted to make sure you were okay. You were monitoring our finances? Mom asked. I was protecting our family. When I saw the foreclosure notice, I had Riverside Holdings purchase the mortgage from the bank. For how much? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. $382,000, plus $83,000 in back payments and fees. Total of $465,000. Dad's face went pale. We had no idea we were that deep. You weren't just deep in debt, Dad. You were facing bankruptcy. Morrison Construction owed $107,000 in unpaid supplier bills, $42,000 in equipment loans, and $28,000 in back taxes. How do you know those exact numbers? Because I paid all of those debts too. Riverside Financial Services, another one of my companies, purchased all of Morrison Construction's outstanding debts and restructured them into manageable payment plans. The table fell silent. Mom was crying openly now, her mascara running down her cheeks. Naomi, she whispered, you saved us from bankruptcy, and we never knew. I saved you from bankruptcy, kept you in your home, protected Dad's business reputation, and made sure you could retire with dignity. All while you both told anyone who would listen that I was wasting my life playing with computers. Dad buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Last month, I continued, my voice steady, when Dad texted me that you were selling the house and putting my stuff on the curb, I realized that you still had no idea what I'd done for this family. What exactly have you done? Mom asked, wiping her eyes. Beyond the house and the debts, what else? I pulled out my phone and opened the Blackwood Foundation app, turning the screen toward them. This foundation has donated $947,000 to local charities over the past 3 years. The Children's Hospital wing that opened last year? The Blackwood Foundation funded the new pediatric surgery equipment. The scholarship program at Lincoln High School? That's us. The new computers at the public library? Also us. You've donated almost $1 million? Dad asked, his voice breaking. $947,000 locally. $19.3 million total across all our markets. I scrolled through project after project that the Blackwood Foundation had funded. Youth centers. Food banks. Community gardens. Scholarship programs. But why didn't you tell us? Mom asked. Why keep it all secret? Because every time I tried to share anything about my work, you changed the subject. Every family dinner, every phone call, every text exchange was about how disappointed you were in my choices. I pulled up our text message history and showed them the screen. Look at this conversation from last Christmas. I texted you about winning a major contract, and you responded by asking when I was going to get a real job and stop playing with computers. Dad stared at the messages, his face crumbling. Or this one from my birthday 8 months ago. I mentioned that my company was expanding, and you texted back about how Brandon had just bought a new house and suggested I should ask him for career advice. We were trying to be helpful, Mom said weakly. You were being dismissive. There's a difference. Our waiter approached carefully. Is everything all right? Your meals are getting cold. We're fine, thank you, I said. Could you please wrap these up for us and bring the check? Of course, Ms. Blackwood. As we waited, Dad finally looked up at me, his eyes red. What happens now? With the house? With everything? That depends on you. The house is yours to live in for as long as you want. The mortgage payments you've been making have been going into a retirement fund that now has $106,000 in it. When you're ready to downsize, you can keep that money. And Morrison Construction? Debt-free and has 4 new contracts lined up, all arranged through Riverside Financial Services. Dad, if you want to keep working, you can. If you want to retire, you can do that too. The check arrived, $927 for dinner. I handed the waiter my Black American Express card without even glancing at the total. Naomi, Mom said as we waited for the car, how can we ever make this up to you? You can start by being proud of what I've accomplished instead of ashamed of it. We are proud, Dad said quickly. We're incredibly proud. We never knew. You never knew because you never asked. And you never asked because you'd already decided that my work wasn't important. The Mercedes pulled up, and Gregory got out to open our doors. As we settled into the car, I pulled out my phone one more time. There's one more thing, I said. Riverside Tech Solutions just won the contract to design the new smart city system for the entire state. It's a $1.6 billion project over 5 years. Dad stared at me in the dim light of the car's interior. Billion? With a B? With a B. The announcement will be in tomorrow's newspaper. Riverside Tech Solutions is now one of the largest technology contractors in the region. Our daughter, Mom whispered to Dad, owns a $1 billion company. Multiple companies, actually. But yes. As we drove through the city, my city, running on systems I'd designed, I watched my parents slowly absorb the reality of what their disappointing daughter had actually accomplished. Naomi, Dad said as we turned onto Magnolia Street, I texted you that your stuff would be on the curb. You did. But it's your house. It's always been your house. For 3 years. Yes. So when I said I was putting you out, I was threatening to evict you from your own property. We pulled up to the house and sat in silence for a moment. The porch light was on, casting a warm glow over the front steps where I used to sit and dream about a future my parents couldn't imagine. The realtor, Dad said suddenly. When I went to list the house and he said it belonged to Riverside Holdings, he was protecting you. David Martinez is one of my employees. He's been managing the Riverside Holdings portfolio for 3 years. Martinez, Mom said slowly. That's your cousin Angela's last name. David is Angela's son. I hired him after he graduated from business school. Mom turned to stare at me. David is working for you? David, Angela's daughter Christina, and 4 of Dad's nephews. Riverside companies employ 23 members of our extended family. 23? Dad's voice cracked. I believe in taking care of family. Even when family doesn't realize they're being taken care of. As my parents got out of the car, Dad turned back to me, his hand on the door. Will you come in? Just for a few minutes? I looked at the house where I'd grown up. Where I'd spent countless hours being told that my interests weren't important, my goals weren't realistic, my achievements weren't worth celebrating. Not tonight, Dad. But maybe this weekend. This weekend would be good, Mom said, wiping her eyes. We have a lot to talk about. We do. As Gregory drove me back to my downtown penthouse, I reflected on the day's events. For 3 years, I'd watched my parents struggle with the shame of nearly losing their home, never knowing that their daughter had not only saved it but built an empire while doing so. Tomorrow, the newspaper would announce the state contract. By next week, Riverside Tech Solutions would be featured in the business section as one of the fastest-growing companies in the region. My parents would finally understand that their disappointing daughter had been quietly revolutionizing an entire industry. But tonight, for the first time in years, they'd go to sleep knowing that their daughter wasn't a failure. She was a success beyond their wildest dreams, and she'd been protecting them all along. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Thank you for saving our home. Thank you for saving our dignity. And thank you for still calling us family after everything we put you through. I smiled and typed back, that's what family does, Dad. We take care of each other, even when it's not appreciated. A few minutes later, another text appeared. Tomorrow. Can we start over? Can we learn about your work and be the parents you deserve? I'd like that very much. As the Mercedes pulled into the parking garage of Riverside Tower, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's proving them wrong while still loving them enough to save them from themselves. And sometimes the most successful people are the ones who succeed quietly, protecting the people who never believed in them in the first place.